early 2000s, if you mentioned Access Bank, most Nigerians would have looked at you in confusion. It was one of the small banks lost in the crowd, ranked 65th out of 89 banks, barely making a whisper in Nigeria's chaotic banking sector at the time. The banking sector as at then was in complete disarray. There were too many banks, too little confidence, and not enough capital to go around. Nigeria was emerging from decades of military rule and economic reforms under President Obasanjo. The Central Bank of Nigeria was calling for stronger institutions, greater transparency, and consolidation. It was clear that only the bold would survive. Into this brewing storm came two young, ambitious bankers, Igboje Ige Imokude and Herbert Wigwe. They were hardly household names then, but they had a dream to take a small, undervalued bank and build it into a continental giant. They took over the management of Access Bank in 2002, putting their reputations, resources, and relationships on the line. But Igboje and Herbert were not playing it safe. They were thinking long term. They saw what others could not see, potential. Rolling up their sleeves and driven by a clear purpose, they set to work, transforming Access Bank from a troubled lender into a world-class financial institution. What followed was a story of determination, measures, digital innovation, and bold leadership. Today, Access Bank is not just one of Nigeria's biggest banks. It is a symbol of strategic excellence and the power of innovative leadership. And it all started with two young men who believed they could change the game. In 2002, Access Bank was hardly a name that you could see on the headlines. Like I said earlier, it was ranked 65th among Nigeria's 89 licensed banks and was barely surviving, certainly not thriving. But the Nigerian banking sector was at a turning point. Sweeping reforms by the central bank were forcing consolidation, while a new generation of technocrats and diaspora returnees began looking at the industry with fresh ambitions. This environment attracted two ambitious minds, Herbert Wigwe and Igboje Ige Imokude. They had already established themselves as rising stars at Guaranty Trust Bank, where they were known for integrity, innovation, and execution. But their ambitions went beyond succeeding in someone else's organization. They wanted to rewrite the rules entirely. So they embarked on a daring mission. They presented a management buyout proposal to the Access Bank board. Access Bank's balance sheet was a mere 2 billion naira at the time, a sum so small that they could barely move the market. Most people thought they were crazy because why bother with such a weak bank when there were stronger ones available? But they saw what others missed: a licensed bank with low liabilities and, most importantly, room for growth. It was a sleeping giant that just needed the right drivers to wake it up. Raising capital was not easy. The Nigerian Stock Exchange was struggling with investors' confidence and the regulatory environment was thick with oversight. However, within 2 years, they raised over 14 billion naira in new equity capital, a massive achievement at the time. They did it based on their track record, relationships with local and foreign investors, and a strong business case. Most of the money came not from traditional financiers, but from high net worth individuals who believed in their vision. The central bank did not hand over control easily. There were rigorous fitness tests, examination of their strategic plan, and close supervision after the acquisition. But the truth is that Igboje and Herbert were ready. Their approach was not profit-driven, but structure-driven, system-driven, and skill-driven. They began reforming the bank from day one. They introduced a performance culture, brought in early automation tools, and focused on customer-oriented retail banking. Unlike most banks that were still run like family businesses, they made corporate governance the heart of operations. And while most operators were distracted by oil money and political connections, these two focused on building a sustainable brand. By 2004, Access Bank was steadily climbing the ranks of financial institutions. What began as an ambitious risk turned out to be one of Nigeria's greatest banking success stories. By the early 2010s, Access Bank was ready to make a mark on a much bigger stage. In banking, expansion is not simply about opening new offices or launching new apps. It is about strategic measures and acquisitions. For Access Bank, two record-breaking deals would change everything. The first major move came in 2011 when they acquired Intercontinental Bank. Let me give you some context. after the 2008 global financial crisis, Nigeria's banking system was in chaos. The central bank under Governor Sanusi Lamido Sanusi had audited all commercial banks. Intercontinental Bank, one of the largest, was flagged for poor corporate governance and mismanagement. It needed to be rescued. Access Bank saw an opportunity. Intercontinental had a solid retail presence, an army of loyal customers, and a huge network of branches. But it also had massive debt problems. It was a high-risk, high-reward gamble, but Iboje and Wigwe were not deterred. They believed they could clean up the mess and expand the bank significantly. By 2012, the deal was complete, and Access Bank jumped from a mid-tier bank to one of Nigeria's top 5 banks overnight. The transaction was not just about numbers, it transformed the bank's image. Access Bank was no longer seen as a boutique corporate bank. It had arrived as a household name. Fast forward to 2019, and the bank embarked on another ambitious project, a merger with Diamond Bank. Diamond Bank had a unique brand as a leader in digital banking and a strong presence in the small business and youth markets. However, by 2018, it was struggling with financial difficulties. Access Bank stepped in again, not as a rescuer this time, but as a strategic merger partner. By April 2019, the merger was completed, creating the largest retail bank in Africa by customer numbers. This was more than a numbers game. The merger brought over 29 million new customers to Access Bank, along with new retail channels and one of the country's most advanced mobile banking platforms. Diamond Bank's mobile app, used by millions of Nigerians, was seamlessly integrated into Access Bank's system, accelerating its digital transformation. The combination gave Access Bank the power to dominate the market, growing its customer base to over 40 million by 2024 and leading not only by retail banking but also in digital financial services. Both deals were not just about buying smaller competitors. They were a strategic move to diversify the bank's revenue, scale it exponentially, and embed the brand into everyday Nigerian life. It transformed Access Bank into a financial giant, proving that smart measures, when executed properly, can be the fastest path to market dominance. After conquering Nigeria's banking sector through aggressive measures and smart management, Access Bank was far from finished. The bank looked beyond Nigerian borders, driven by vision that seemed modest but was actually incredibly ambitious: to become Africa's gateway to the world. For Iboje, Aigimokude, and Herbert Wigwe, this vision was more than corporate talk. It was a mission unfolding before their eyes. They did not want to build just the largest bank in Nigeria, but a leading African bank rooted in its heritage but global in its reach. Access Bank's international expansion began in the early 2010s but became serious after 2020. Using Nigeria as its base, the bank began acquiring and investing in banks in markets with strong potential for trade, remittances, and regional integration. By 2024, Access Bank had a presence in more than 20 countries, including South Africa, Kenya, Rwanda, Zambia, Ghana, and Mozambique. Key highlights included acquiring Bank ABC in Botswana and Mozambique, giving them a foothold in South Africa. They also entered the Angolan market by acquiring Finibanco, a strategic expansion into one of Africa's top oil-producing nations. In East Africa, Access Bank made waves with its push into Kenya, which is known as Africa's fintech hub, through the acquisition of Transnational Bank in 2020. This gave them access to a tech-savvy young population and opened Access Bank to the region's thriving mobile banking sector. Beyond Africa, the bank expanded into Europe and Asia. In the United Kingdom, Access Bank UK has been growing strongly, providing trade finance and banking services to diaspora Africans and multinational companies. In 2021, they opened a representative office in China to facilitate trade and demonstrate their global ambitions. Rather than starting from scratch in new markets, the bank focused on acquiring underperforming but promising local banks. This strategy gave Access Bank immediate access to customer bases, branch networks, and valuable market knowledge, saving enormous time and cost. Each acquisition came with a localization strategy, ensuring that the bank could adapt and operate according to local culture and regulations. The same team ran from Angola to Kenya, local purpose combined with a global vision. Access Bank's dream dream to become Africa's gateway to the world has moved beyond wishful thinking. It is now a reality built on smart decisions, visionary leadership, and an unwavering belief in the ability of African banks to compete on the global stage. When Aiboje Aigimokode and Herbert Wigwe acquired Access Bank in 2002, they did not plan to simply run a bank, grow it, and add new products. They aimed to transform the entire banking industry in Nigeria, and they succeeded. Today, their names are remembered for leading one of the most impressive financial revolutions in Nigerian history. They brought a new playbook, one that prioritized structure over shortcuts, long-term thinking over quick wins, and integrity over influence. Their leadership style promoted governance, professionalism, and data-driven decision-making, qualities that were rare in Nigerian banking at the time. They did not just copy best practices from elsewhere, they created new ones. One of their biggest achievements was in financial inclusion, seeing that millions of Nigerians operated outside the formal banking system. Access Bank launched Access Closer, a massive agency banking network. By 2022, they had over 160,000 agents spread across all 774 local government areas in Nigeria, bringing banking services to the most remote communities. From basic cash transactions to microloans and savings, Access Bank became the people's bank. They invested heavily in technology, innovation, developing their user-friendly mobile apps, USSD banking, and online lending services long before this became mainstream. This made banking faster, more convenient, and more secure, especially for Nigeria's growing youth population and informal sector workers. Their impact extended beyond banking. They funded education, healthcare, and women's empowerment programs in Nigeria and across Africa through the Access Bank Foundation. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Access Bank was a key player in funding emergency relief and keeping small businesses afloat. Even after stepping down from their executive roles, their influence continued. Aiboje channeled his passion into the Africa Initiative for Governance, where he worked tirelessly to mentor the next generation of African leaders. Herbert Wigwe, before his tragic death in 2024, was building Wigwe University, a world-class institution dedicated to developing Africa's future leaders. Their legacy is not in buildings or numbers, it's in the cultural transformation they started. They proved that with the right values, a Nigerian organization can compete globally, empower people, and transform lives. Aiboje and Herbert were not just running a bank, they were writing the playbook for leadership. This is not just a story of some founders or a bank. It's a proof that greatness is possible in Nigeria. With the right mindset, the right people, and the right vision, the impossible becomes possible. If you have enjoyed this inspiring journey and learned something new, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs motivation, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more amazing content coming up. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.